Welcome to the Recaps channel. In today's video, we'll recap The Box. Let's get started. In Virginia in December 1976, Arthur and Norma Lewis are awakened by the doorbell. Norma sees a black car leaving and finds a plain box on their porch. They open it and discover a wooden box with a button that requires a key for access and an envelope containing a note stating that Mr. Stewart will call upon them at 5 p.m. The family then leaves for the day. At school, Norma's student asks about her limp. Afterwards, she is called to the principal's office and informed that the faculty discount for her son's tuition will no longer be provided. Meanwhile, Arthur's work is interrupted by his boss, Norm Cahill, who delivers a rejection letter for his astronaut application due to failing the psychological exam. When Norma returns home, the disfigured Mr. Stewart pays her a visit. He gives her the key to the box and reveals that if she presses it, two things will occur: an unknown person in the world will die, and she will receive $1 million in cash, tax-free. He gives her $100 for allowing him into their house and outlines the rules. He cannot reveal his employer's identity. Norma can only discuss the matter with Arthur, and she has 24 hours to decide. Stewart will return the next day at 5 p.m. to collect the box, which will be reprogrammed and given to another family. Later, Arthur arrives, and Norma informs him about Stewart and the box. Unable to reach an agreement, they secure the box in their safe and go to the theater while their son, Walter, stays with his babysitter, Dana. At the theater, they are oblivious to the fact that they are being watched. Upon returning home, Arthur opens the box and discovers it is empty. They argue about making a decision because of their financial issues before going to bed. The next day, one of Arthur's colleagues, Jeffrey Carnes, receives a call from his wife reporting a woman being kidnapped at the grocery store. Jeffrey instructs her to go home and secure all the doors, while being unaware that he is also being observed from a distance like Arthur and Norma. After work, Arthur tells Norma that the $100 bill is real. After some discussion, Norma impulsively presses the button, believing it's just a box. Shortly after, they learn that someone has been shot, and the shooter fled with a briefcase. Stewart returns, giving them the $1 million and confirming that someone has indeed died. He then takes the box and tells them that the same offer will be presented to another unknown person. Arthur tries to return the money, but Stewart declines, stating that it is too late because the button has been pressed. At the police station, Norma's father, Dick Burns, is involved in the investigation of the dead woman. They identify her as Jeffrey's wife, but Jeffrey himself is missing. Later that night, Arthur presents Norma with the prosthetic foot he has crafted, which allows her to walk without pain or a limp. They then attend the rehearsal dinner for Norma's sister's wedding, where her student, Charles, is working as a waiter. Norma's parents hold a raffle, and Arthur wins the first prize, a plain brown box resembling the one Stewart left for them. Arthur takes the box to their table and opens it with Norma, discovering a photograph of Stewart from a time when he had an undamaged face. Shortly after, while having a drink with Dick, Arthur shares Stewart's license plate number with him, asking for assistance in using his police resources to uncover the man's true identity. Arthur also notices Charles's persistent observation of him and inquires about him from another guest. He becomes upset upon learning that Charles embarrassed Norma in front of the class. Meanwhile, a waiter informs Norma that she has a phone call. It is Stewart who warns her about the consequences of involving the police. Alarmed by the noises outside, Norma hurries out of the room to find Arthur engaged in a heated confrontation with Charles. Trying to avoid a scene, she pulls Arthur away and asks him to go home. However, when they reach their car, they discover the words, "No exit," written on the window, and Charles once again flashes the peace sign at them. Back at the house, Walter's babysitter, Dana, keeps him entertained while disregarding the shadows outside the window. Arthur offers to drive Dana to her place, and during the ride, she mentions staying at a motel and makes cryptic remarks that suggest she may understand what he is going through. When Arthur seeks her advice, she tells him to look into the light before passing out with a nosebleed. In an attempt to find information to assist her, Arthur searches inside her bag and discovers an ID indicating that her name is actually Sarah Matthews. He discreetly puts it in his pocket as Dana wakes up and becomes frantic, insisting that he needs to leave because it's unsafe for him to stay. As Dana enters the motel, all the guests come out to observe her as she walks to her room. Inside, she has a large board displaying a map and pictures of the Lewis family. The motel guests then gather around the pool, fixating on the water. Arthur returns to Norma and reveals that Dana lied to them. While examining Stewart's photograph, Arthur realizes that he has seen him before and rushes to look at a poster from the initial Viking mission to Mars, where Stewart is depicted as one of the mission workers. The following day, Stewart warns Norma again. Norma proposes a face-to-face meeting, and Stewart tells her that he is looking at her. Norma turns around and sees an unfamiliar man outside gazing at her. Arthur visits Dick at the police station to inquire about any updates regarding the license plate, which is revealed to belong to an NSA vehicle. Upon learning that Jeffrey's wife died at the same time they pressed the button, Arthur asks Dick to accompany him to the crime scene. At Jeffrey's house, Arthur discovers a photograph of Stewart and a document with accompanying numbers. Meanwhile, a woman approaches Norma and tells her that the NSA permits him and hands her a note containing a number to follow upon visiting the Richmond Library, cautioning her not to trust anyone, not even her husband. At the library, Norma and Arthur discover a recording depicting the aftermath of a lightning strike that occurred months earlier. It includes a segment from a NASA press conference attended by Stewart before the tragedy. Norma is then guided by two women to Stewart, where he reveals that ever since he was struck by lightning, he has been in communication with those who control it. He expresses curiosity about Norma's initial reaction upon seeing his disfigured face. Stewart expects pity but is surprised when Norma empathizes with him. Stewart, taken aback, asks her to take his hand, causing her to lose consciousness. Arthur discovers a book and a newspaper article about a NASA lightning incident. As he leaves with the materials, he's followed by library patrons blocking his way. Clymene, Stewart's wife, guides him to 3 gateways. Arthur must choose carefully, as only one gateway leads to salvation, while the other 2 lead to eternal damnation. Arthur chooses gateway number 2, recalling Charles's sign from the party, and is enveloped in light. He appears in his room above Norma, who wakes up before he collapses onto the bed. Walter finds them and mentions Norma's strange behavior the previous night. Meanwhile, Cahill meets with an NSA employee who reveals Stewart's transformation after being struck by lightning. Stewart overhears their conversation. Stewart explains his perspective on boxes and the test's significance. Stewart's tests can be passed by refraining from pressing the button, and the outcomes of these tests will determine the fate of humanity as determined by his employers. At the wedding, Arthur describes the light to Norma. They are followed by Stewart's associates. Arthur feels unwell and encounters Jeffrey with a gun. Jeffrey takes Arthur, while Walter and Norma are abducted by men. Jeffrey shows Arthur classified documents revealing Stewart's limitation in controlling people's minds. They learn that Arthur's son has been taken to a motel, similar to Jeffrey's daughter. They encounter a Santa Claus blocking the road, who turns out to be one of Stewart's employees. Suddenly, another vehicle collides with them. When the police arrive, they only find Jeffrey's lifeless body inside the truck. Suddenly, Arthur finds himself at a NASA hangar where Cahill awaits him. They are brought back home, where Stewart presents a final test. Walter is locked in the bathroom, blind and deaf. The couple must choose between a life of wealth with a disabled son or killing Norma to restore Walter's senses and inheritance. Angry, Arthur points a gun at his own head, but Stewart explains its futility. Norma asks Arthur to shoot her instead. Arthur kisses her and pulls the trigger, resulting in Norma's death and another couple pressing the button. Arthur attempts to communicate with Walter, but he only hears Walter calling out to him. The police arrive and take Arthur in an NSA car. Cahill promises to take care of Walter. Stewart retrieves the box, ready to pass it on. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share if you enjoyed the video. See you again here on the Recaps channel.